And thank you all, and welcome to Brussels, the heart of Europe. It's an impressive turnout, and it means that the GCCA seems to be able to mobilize people. For sure, from our side, here in headquarters, we were looking very much forward to this event, and we are very happy to see it materialize. So we can finally meet all of you who actually are the people that are making the GCCA a reality on the ground. Indeed, as much as the idea, the strategy and the necessary funding originated from headquarters, and by the way, we still have some of those visionary people who drafted the initial text here in the room, the real work actually has been done by you. And like we, in headquarters, struggled 5 years ago to write a strategy for the GCCA based on rather limited information and trying to make sure that we focus the initiative there where the needs would be, I'm sure that from your side you also struggled, sometimes through trial and error, to implement the program in the most efficient way and maximizing its impact. And that is actually the reason why we are here, together for the next 3 days, to share those experiences and learn from them and improve the design of future programs. And I think that this can only be done if we have frank, open and constructive discussions. And so, rather than calling this a conference, I would call it a workshop. It was already said before, we are counting on your active participation to make this a success. So this is, for once, a conference where the conclusions are not yet written. So in the, I hope, unlikely case that you might conclude and stand up on Friday and say, away with GCCA, well, we'll swallow twice, but we'll consider it. If, on the contrary, you would say GCCA must surely stay, we'll consider that as well, but we'll have to go and look for funding, and so we'll have another problem. But we'll consider that. So, on a more serious note, what we are looking for is a rich and factual debate to the benefit of all. And I know that the setting at this point in time is rather formal, but that will change. It's kind of negotiation type of setting, but that will change once we move into the breakout rooms. So let's have a closer look at what we have achieved together in this Global Climate Change Alliance. First of all, the question is there, what is the GCCA? Of course, you all know about the GCCA by now, but I think it's still useful to underline a few specific features of the GCCA. So as was said, it's an initiative that was launched in 2007, specifically to strengthen the dialogue and the cooperation on climate change between the European Union and developing countries most vulnerable to climate change, and in particular, the LDCs and SIDS, the Small Island Development States. So why is it global? It's global because it involves a wide range of partners across the world. It's not global in the sense that everybody is a participant. And it's an alliance because it links up a group of like-minded countries convinced that climate change actions are needed now. It's paid for under our DCI instrument, which is an ODA instrument, because the idea was to increase the capacities of those countries to adapt to climate change in order to pursue sustainable development strategies, and there, where possible, to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions in order to contribute to this target of 2 degrees Celsius and avoid further costly adaptation measures. So as you can see from the drawing, the GCCA is based on two pillars, or actually three if you divide the technical and the financial support in two. And that's also where the specificity is. There is, first of all, the platform for policy dialogue. Maybe a number of people have not really understood that that is also part of this GCCA setup. It's not only the projects that are implemented in the countries. There is this very important policy dialogue element. And what have we been doing there? It's making the link with what is being discussed in the UNFCCC framework. So the idea was we start with what is discussed there, see what is coming the way of the developing countries. How can we prepare them for this? Translate it into actions through negotiations at country level. And once we have translated that into actions and into projects, the feedback that we then get from there, we will use and feedback into that negotiation setting. So I wanted to draw your attention to that important aspect. Maybe another thing to clarify is that what the GCCA is not. The GCCA is not some kind of dedicated trust fund. So it's an initiative that is funded from different EU financial instruments, be it the European Development Fund or the DCI, the Development Cooperation Instrument, and indirectly through contributions from EU member states, because this is an EU-wide initiative. This has the blessing from Council. So in the original text, these were texts that were approved at EU level. And we had contributions from Sweden, Ireland, Cyprus, Estonia, and the Czech Republic so far. There is also no real end date to the GCCA initiative. But as it fits into our financial framework, the funding runs up to 2013, and then we will have to see what comes after 2013. And as you can see, starting with the ideas, putting the ideas on paper in 2007, and we are gathering together for the first time to have some lessons learned, that's a long period of time. And I think that's the first lesson. If we have to implement projects and make the link with whatever is discussed in an international framework, it takes time, and you cannot do and change things overnight. So that is, I think, one first message. Let me zoom in a little bit on this policy dialogue and what we did in this policy dialogue. So in order to try and converge the visions on a post-2012 climate change regime, which is something that we all want and that we all work for, we organized regional conferences in order to stimulate that policy dialogue. So we brought together negotiators, politicians, practitioners in regional conferences, and you can see the list of the conferences that we had over time. And the result of those conferences were joint declarations. And we had joint declarations for each of those events. I've just put an extract of the one from Asia, which was signed at ministerial level and from our side by the Commissioner for Climate Action, Connie Hedegaard. So we have joint declarations that carry some weight. So in there, we acknowledge that climate change is a threat to achieve MDGs, that we will cooperate towards successful conclusions of the post-2012 agreement. We will work together to mobilize the necessary support, and we describe in there the actions that we will do together. At another level, we are also dealing with this policy dialogue, and it is at the national level. And this is through the delegations that represent the EU in your countries and that have been discussing with you in the framework of the project that needed to be identified, or when you were discussing the setting up of a sector policy or the design of a climate change strategy. So that is for that first pillar. The other pillar was is the technical and the financial support. The priorities of GCCA have been described already by Mark before. I quickly run through them, but I won't spend too much time on it because we will go into a lot of detail during the rest of the workshop or the conference. So the first one really targets institutional strengthening and try to make this mainstreaming of climate change into your own policies and development strategies a reality. The next one is increasing the knowledge of the effect that climate change can have on development and improve design of adaptation actions. The one on reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, REDD+, is an important one because for us it provides for a triple win or a quadruple win, if you want. It is good for adaptation, for mitigation, for poverty alleviation, and at the same time for biodiversity conservation. Then the other priority was, at the time, we thought that there would be need, looking at how the CDM distribution of projects was, to try and make least developed countries profit more from this facility. To our surprise, and again something to be discussed, there was not a lot of interest in that particular part of the program. And then the last one, disaster risk reduction, obviously very important, and certainly if in the target countries you have the SIDS, the small island development states. This is in a nutshell what GCCA has been providing over the years. I will not go and name them one by one. It's just to provide you an overview so you can see that we have been working really around the globe, that we have implemented through sector programs, either with a project approach or a budget support approach. We have tried as well in several occasions budget support, which is one of the other specificities that we have pushed in this GCCA program, that is to have a more strategic and sectoral approach and leave aside the ad hoc project approach with limited impact. And the best you can do this is if you can go through the country's own systems, and that we can do if we provide direct budget support. There is an indication of where we held mainstreaming workshops, and I will come back to that, and also where part of the project or the program in the country is dealing with mainstreaming climate change. So all in all, where we started very timidly in 2008 with 4 pilot countries, we grew and have now at least around 45 programs and projects across the world. To this, you can add the countries for 2013, which are not shown, and it's another 9 countries that will benefit from support. These are Malawi, Sao Tome and Principe, Djibouti, Tanzania, Haiti, the Comoros, Chad, Mauritania, and Myanmar. Another thing I would like to mention, which maybe not everybody knows, 75 million of the total amount counted for the Commission as its contribution to the adaptation fast start financing. So the pledge that we made in Copenhagen to contribute to fast start financing, the adaptation part was done through the GCCA. It had to be fast. We thought we have a system that is in place. It is something that is directly discussed with the beneficiary countries. So this is something that we can use to that effect. Some other things that we do under dialogue and technical support are those mainstreaming workshops. So we held 10 regional workshops in the different regions where we brought together, and that was rather important, the planning people from the country and the environmentalists or the climate experts from those technical ministries. So this is very much a hands-on training. The training material is available. We had feedback that those workshops were extremely useful. We have many requests for them to be replicated. There is a possibility to have a trainer train other trainers. It can be used by those people for themselves to provide the training to colleagues in different ministries. And it's something that we think is maybe also useful to continue if at the end we decide here that there could be a GCCA plus. We also pay a lot of attention to the knowledge management and communication. Maybe I didn't mention it, but we have a dedicated support facility that supports the GCCA. It's an incredible group of people that have helped us a lot, that have helped us, you as well, in the identification of programs. And they are also dealing with this knowledge management and communication part. So there is this global learning event that has been put together with their support. We have had quite a number of publications. We were and presented the GCCA in quite a number of side events of the Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC. We have a dedicated website, and as you might have seen in your email, we invited you to become a member of this GCCA group community on the Capacity for Dev, which is a platform where we can exchange experiences. And I think there will be some more information provided on that later on. Before ending, I have a number of slides with questions. The number of slides are nearly as many as the previous ones, but it shows that we really want to have an open discussion, and we want to show you with which questions we are struggling, and which I think can be some kind of red thread through the 3 days. First of all, the target countries so far have been the LDCs and SIDS. We have made a ranking, but since it's now in the 4th year, we are in the 4th year, we are coming to the bottom of the list. So if there is a GCCA plus after 2013, what do? We open up to, and it's stated in the original communication, to other most vulnerable countries. On the basis of which criteria? Do we go back and check what has been done in the different LDCs and SITs and check where there are gaps and so on, and come back. Is there absorption capacity? Things we need to discuss. On the policy dialogue, we now have these joint declarations. Now what next? How can we maximize their impact? In a number of those joint declarations, the last paragraph specifies that we were going to set up joint technical groups at regional level to ensure follow-up. They have not particularly materialized. Do we push for them? Were they not materialized because there were other fora in which we could deal with the follow-up? Or should we think more of organizing regional technical sessions where we have an even closer contact between the negotiators and the development practitioners in order to align field actions with the negotiations? Another question is, how can the GCCA best contribute to national efforts at a strategic sector-wide level? So, in other words, more accent than before on mainstreaming, because we are at the start, and more budget support if that is possible. Linked to that, what modalities and/or approaches used by the GCCA have proven most successful in supporting the alignment with the national strategies? That is something that is extremely important and a valuable information for us. The second slide of questions is, to what extent are pilot and demonstration projects important? Because we had a few of them in a number of GCCA countries. Are they multiplied? Are they, since they are pilots, are they used elsewhere? And how do they complement work at a more strategic and cross-sector-wide level? What about applied research? Did we have enough of that? Was there sufficient support? Do you have sufficient data collection? The analysis of those data? Do you need more support in that? Something to think about. Then something about the long-term institutional strengthening. We can initiate and provide technical assistance in order to do this for some period of time. How do you get the sustainability in that? How do you prolong this effort? And then a last slide, which kind of brings it all together. Well, the question becomes now, what's future for the GCCA, meaning after 2013? Which directions should the GCCA take over the next years? What should be the priorities? We had priorities before. Some were more successful than others. Maybe there are new ones that we have to take into consideration. And then the last one is, how can the GCCA best complement other initiatives? We think we have a space for GCCA exactly because of what I explained before, the policy, the technical assistance and the financial part, everything together with an interaction. But there are many other initiatives out there. So it's for you to tell us, well, there are too many and GCCA is one too much. Or how can we make it easier for you to bring them together and to complement each other? So as you can see, it's really going to be a workshop, and we will need your input. And the agenda is dense, and it's going to be a tough 3 days, but I'm sure that the effort, the outcome is going to be worth the effort. So with that, I thank you all, and I hope that we will have a fruitful workshop. Thank you.